Okay, we're going to start by teaching you how to use a micrometer. And this is a slightly different micrometer than the one you've got, but similar enough. There's two scales on this micrometer. The first one is on the center bar, and it goes 0 through whatever. The number 1 mark is 10 millimeters, or 1 centimeter. The second scale on this micrometer is on the bottom part of it, and there's 10 markings across here also. On your micrometer you'll have the markings up here on top. The first line that we really care about is this first line on the sliding scale. That becomes our millimeter mark. So right now that line is lined up directly with a 0, which means the distance between these two jaws is 0 millimeters. If I were to slide this over just a little bit, so that now the first line lines up with the first line on the center scale exactly, then I would know that the distance between these two was exactly 1 millimeter. You're going to be held accountable to fractions of a millimeter, so let me teach you how you're going to do that. If this first line were somewhere between two markings up here, then you'd have to determine how much of a millimeter over the whole number was being marked. I'm going to slide this over till it's just a little past 5, but not quite up to 6. So this bottom line, or the line on the sliding scale, now lines up between the 5 line and the 6 line. The way I determine how much over 5 millimeters it is by coming along the sliding scale on the bottom until I get to a line that lines up directly with the center scale. And as I slide along here, it looks like it's the third one over. So I count from here: 1, 2, 3. So this should be 5.3 millimeters exactly. Okay, so one of your first assignments is to figure out how to use the micrometer. One of the measurements you'll be held accountable for is the mesial distal dimension on the cuspid, which is 8.4. I'm going to stop the videotape. I want you to set your micrometer to 8.4 and then raise your hand, and either a teacher or TA will come and check your accuracy. Okay, each of you should have been given a picture with a diagram. There's a line drawing over on the one side, and on the other side there's a pictorial representation of the tooth you'll be carving. First tooth we'll be carving is tooth number 6, an upper right cuspid. There's 3 measurements you're going to be held accountable for. Zoom here a little bit. So the apical incisal measurement for this tooth is 29 millimeters. The mesial distal dimension on this tooth is 8.4, and the facial lingual dimension is 8.8. Now, when we go to grade these, you can go plus or minus 0.5 millimeters without having a point detraction. However, to be safe, we recommend that you stay within a plus or minus 0.3 millimeters. When you're making your carvings, for example, on our first cut, we hope to end up with 29 millimeters. I'm going to set my micrometer 1/2 millimeter larger than that to give myself a little room to take off extra. It's easier to take off more than it is to add. So we'll be setting our micrometer to 29 millimeters, 29.5, I'm sorry. So here's our wax block. We're going to slide this scale over to 29.5 millimeters. You can see that the first or primary line down here is just before 30. This would be the 30 mark. So 29.5, and if I follow across, I'll find the number 5 line lines up exactly with the line above it. So now we're going to take and lay our micrometer. Use a different wax block. And lay our micrometer down on the wax. I'm going to take the point of my knife and score the wax. So just that little bit on the end is going to be removed. First part of carving, especially on a larger piece of wax like this, is done by taking the tip of the knife, pointing it in towards the wax, and I point it slightly out away from the part I want to preserve, and just gouging it out of there. take about quarter inch bites on the wax. I go across once, you can see that I've really just taken off a corner. And I'll come back and go across again. Each time going a little bit further down the block. Third time through, I'm going almost all the way down the block. So that's what we've done. We've taken off about 1 millimeter to get 29.5. Now just scraping to kind of square up the block and get rid of some of the roughness that came from gouging off wax. So now we've got a 29.5 millimeter block. Our next measurement that we're held accountable for is mesial distal, 8.4. If I add 0.5 millimeters to that, we're going to be at 8.9. Which is right there. Again, I'm going to score the block with my knife. So this is where my cut's going to go. And all of this wax is going to be removed. Do the same thing we did before. We're going to start at one side of the block, point of your knife straight in. You're tilting slightly out away from the part that's going to be preserved so you don't get a crack propagating through. And rock your knife back and forth until a big chunk falls off. Move forward 1/4 of an inch. Do the same thing. After my first pass, I've essentially taken off the upper 50% of the corner. We're going to go back and do the same thing, but this time my knife's going more straight up and down. I'm still using the point, not the blade. Progressing across the block in 1/4 inch sections. So there I'm at, where I'm at after the second pass. Now the third pass is going to be straight up and down. Now I am using the knife blade rather than the point. This is a dull knife.